Good evening. The Board of Trustees of Cypress-Fairbanks Independent School District is now convened in a Committee of the Whole meeting on Thursday, September the 6th, 2012, in the boardroom of the Cypress-Fairbanks Independent School District Instructional Support Center, 10,300 Jones Road, Houston, Texas, at 6 p.m., for the purpose of reviewing that portion of the September 10th, 2012 school board agenda designated as action items and to hear designated reports and recognitions posted in the meeting notice as required by Texas law. No action will be taken at this meeting. I want to welcome the members of our audience and our television viewers to this meeting of the Board of Trustees. As the Cypress-Fairbanks Board of Trustees, we are here to set goals, listen to the reports from the superintendent, approve budgets, contracts, personnel appointments, and make policy for the district. It is not the role of the board to make day-to-day operational decisions. The management and day-to-day operations of the district are the responsibility of the superintendent. We have policies and procedures in place to resolve concerns and issues. This is a public meeting of the Board of Trustees, not a meeting of the public. Prior to this meeting, board members received information related to items on tonight's agenda. Agenda items will not necessarily be handled in the order listed on the notice. The meeting is open to all who wish to attend and hear the matters discussed. During the course of this meeting, the board may determine that a closed session is necessary. In that event, the board will meet in closed session to consider matters duly posted for this meeting as permitted by Section 551.071 to 551.084 inclusive of the Texas Government Code. These proceedings are airing live on CFTV Channel 16 and CFTV online on the district website. They will also be rebroadcast throughout the month on Channel 16 and available as video on demand on the website. For the tape to adequately reflect the proceedings, I respectfully ask that you please refrain from talking while others are speaking and that cell phones are turned off or in silent mode. Thank you for taking the time to join us this evening and for your interest in Cypress-Fairbanks Independent School District. Our AVP students tonight are from Jersey Village High School. They are Idir U Akpan, boy, that messed that one up, excuse me. Trevor Hargis, Ray Contreras, James Owens, AJ Gonzalez, Triton Went, Daniel Mulholland, Andrew Cordova, Joy Travis. The AVP advisor is Cindy Stoker, who is a spotlight teacher for Jersey Village this year. And I'm thankful Don is not here tonight to have heard me mess up that name. The board will hear the following reports. 4A, the administration will provide an oral report on Federal Accountability System, the AYP. That'll be handled on Monday evening. Tonight, the administration will provide an oral report on instructional materials allotment. Presenters are Teresa Hall and Marty Edwards.
Good evening. I'm going to start the report out, the oral report, and then I'm going to defer to Linda and Harold to make some additional comments. And when we're done, if you have any questions, we'll be glad to answer your questions. Under the IMA, in the last legislative session, Senate Bill 6 established the Instructional Materials Allotment Fund. The bill requires that 50% of the distribution from the Permanent School Fund be set aside to fund IMA for the purpose of instructional materials or services. The bill requires that districts certify that they are covering all elements of the text each year. The bill requires that textbook adoption cycles be pushed back to allow for only one adoption each biennium. The bill also did away with the technology fund by merging it into the IMA. The bill changed the way textbooks were allocated to districts by the state and eliminated the funding directly allocated for technology. In the past, a school district received one free textbook for each student enrolled in each class. The district also received funding to be used for technology for each student enrolled in the district. Under the IMA formula, Cy-Fair is about $4 to $4.5 million short in funding from the state this biennium to provide the same one-to-one textbook model and provide the same funds for technology as in previous years. Because of this shortage, the district has established an IMA committee made up of members from curriculum, finance, technology, general administration departments, which is headed by Mrs. Hull, to approve allocations from the IMA account. The committee decided to allocate a classroom set of textbooks in all classes with the exception of classes designated by the curriculum department as classes that require a one-to-one textbook for various reasons. Those classes include all AP classes, dual credit classes, along with college algebra and pre-calculus. Parents may also request, through the school, a take-home textbook in other classes. The libraries have also been stocked with textbooks for students to use on a short-term basis. I'm now going to turn it over to Linda for some additional comments, and then to Harold.
The instructional material allotment allows our curriculum department, our district, some flexibility in purchasing the resources and materials that our teachers and curriculum content experts have identified as the most effective for our students to master the standards. Now, in many of our content areas, the textbooks are used as a resource. They're not the curriculum. We write most of the curriculum and use a variety of materials, including the textbooks, as resources. Now, I'll give you some reasons why we do that. The life adoption of our textbooks has increased over the last years. And so they become outdated before the new adoption comes into play. An example is our science adoption. Our science textbooks are actually about 12 years old. Since that time, things have changed. For example, Plato is no longer a planet. Pluto. What did I say? Plato? Pluto. Thank you. Plato's not a planet either. But Pluto is no longer a planet. Also, the standards and the text will change throughout the life of the adoption. They'll change, or sometimes they're moved from one grade level to the other grade level. An example of that is in our current science, our standards right now, we are required to teach and to test renewable and non-renewable resources. And our new texts say that's all there is, renewable and non-renewable. However, the textbooks also says that inexhaustible is also a type of resource, so another type of change. And so many of the textbooks become outdated during the life of the adoption. So a class set is more than sufficient for these classes. In fact, by the time we adopt, or we're projecting to adopt a new science textbook, will be about 2014-15. So basically, we'll be 4 years into the new assessment, 5 years into new standards that were set. So you can see why we have to be creating our own curriculum and not really rely on the textbooks as the curriculum, but they are a resource. They were even adopted right before tax was out. But there are some areas, as Mr. Edwards stated, where the textbooks are used heavily. And so we have continued to purchase one-to-one for the students. And those are, as he said, our dual credit classes, our AP courses, our college algebra, and our pre-calculus classes. So our curriculum team, along with teams of teachers, spend quite a bit of time evaluating when textbooks are needed as a resource and when they're actually needed on a one-to-one basis by the students. And then that's how we made the decisions whether to buy enough for one-to-one or to buy class sets to be used as a resource.
Thank you. I'm sorry. Thank you. As Mr. Edwards referenced earlier, the current instructional materials allotment is sort of a mashup or a commingling of what was the old technology allotment and new monies flowing to us for textbooks. The allocation in years past was about $30 per student, which to us was around $3 million. And there were constraints around how those monies were spent. We chose to invest them in training and support and software. We continue, even in this new combined format, we continue to spend monies out of IMA, less than the original allotment, but along the same lines. We're paying for some technical support at schools, we're paying for some software licenses and things like that. So it's consistent with how we use the technology allotment in the past.
Marty?
Any questions?
Anybody have? Christine?
My first question is, are most of the textbooks available online so that people who have internet access can, I know as a parent, I got lots of codes for the online textbook.
The answer to that is yes and no.
Okay.
Some of them are, all of them that we adopted, or I don't say all, most of the textbooks that we adopted do have online access. However, we're getting to the age now to where the adoption that we previously adopted is no longer in place. An example is some social studies materials. That was an 8-year adoption, but because the adoption process has been pushed back by the state, we still have those textbooks. There has not been a new social studies adoption. So under our old adoption policies with the publishers, we were allowed that online access for a limited number of years. Our problem that we're starting to run into now is that contract is no longer valid, so we're not entitled to that online access from the publisher. And so we're trying to work with the publishers, but the publishers are really being hit hard by the new IMA policies because they're not selling near the number of textbooks they were before. So they're trying to make up some funds. So some of the publishers are saying if you want us to turn on the online access again, you're going to have to start buying more books from us. We'll go back to the one from one. We'll turn those back on. So the answer is yes, we do, but as the age in our contract is no longer valid, then we run into that problem of, the publisher technically does not have to provide that to us. The other problem is everybody in the state is kind of in the same situation, and those online accesses were not developed for the state of Texas to access that textbook all at the same time. So the publishers don't have the server capability to do that. And so even in some instances where we do have the rights, the servers just won't support all the requests that they're getting from across the state in some of those areas.
Well, and real quick, one other thing is, I think the most important thing in addition to that is to let the parents know that they can check out a textbook.
Yes.
The other night I had a teacher who said, here is the form. This is what it looks like to sign it, have your kid bring it back tomorrow if you want a book at home. And that was great. And so I think as long as the parents know that they can check out a book if they'd like it at home, it's very beneficial.
Yeah, and we want to still be able to do that, and we have been able to do that. We have not run into the case where if a parent wants their child to have a textbook to take home, we have extra books to give that child to take that home. And so we do have forms that we've made out last year, and we made out new ones this year, and we have them in all the AP's offices and the textbook offices in the high schools and the middle schools. And if you want to check out that book and take it home, you fill out the form, you check off the books that you want, you give it to the AP, and you receive the textbooks.
Thank you.
Any other John?
To Linda, I guess this is because I've been out of school so long, but what happened to Pluto? I feel so.
That's Mickey's dog, isn't it?
Poor Pluto.
It's more of a gas than really a planet.
Okay.
Poor
Okay.
planet.
All
It was
right.
downgraded to a poor
Downgraded.
planet.
All right.
It's still out there, John.
It's still out there.
Lida?
I was just wondering if we could get the bullet points on this. Normally, we get paperwork or we get the report online. If we could just have the bullet points on this, because it's nice to be able, when parents talk to us about these kinds of things, that we have some numbers at hand. We will. So if you wouldn't mind doing that, I'd appreciate
We
it.
can have that for Monday.
Great, thanks.
Tom?
Bob, I know you're surprised that I would have any
I'm
questions.
tickled to have you do this.
Thank you. Wasn't there a change in the law as to ownership of the textbooks?
Yes. The state, in the previous method of, we received the books one for one from the state actually owned the textbooks. Now, any book that is in our possession now, when IMA was created, those books were automatically transferred to the district. So the district is now the owner of those textbooks. There are we're the owners, but the state still has some requirements that they put on us. If we can't sell we can't sell a textbook that's still an adoption without written permission from the state. So say we had extra textbooks, in some cases we do, like an IPC, we have a lot of books extra because of the 4-year science program, the way it worked out. But to be able to sell any of those books, we have to have permission from the state. So yes, we do own the books now, but there are some guidelines that we still have to follow from the state.
So we own the books, but we don't have complete right of ownership.
Correct.
One interesting tidbit that came out of Santa Fe, Christine and I were up there, we had the opportunity to visit with board members from one of the Baltimore school districts. They only receive $3,000 more per child than we do. They entered
We
into...
can provide one-to-one with 3,000 more, I believe.
Well, what they're doing is on a pilot program, they selected over 10,000 students, and all their textbooks are downloaded onto a tablet. I presume we have no tablets with textbooks downloaded?
Not presently. In the U.S. History program, the one-to-one go-home laptop program, we have the textbooks on those laptops, and I think we also put the English 3 textbook on those laptops. As we look at this tablet pilot that I apprised the board of earlier, we will be reaching into high school and possibly could load, if monies are available, download the textbooks to those tablets. That is the vision of this legislation of Senate Bill 6 and other legislation before it, is to sort of get some efficiencies out of this textbook spend, translated into technology where the content will be.
To add to that, Tom, we've actually examined with publishers, what would it cost us for the rights to do that, to put them on. And their basic response is, it's a one-to-one. You've already have the textbook. If you want to have the rights to put it on, then you're talking about it, say a book costs $75, we're going to need another $75 to load that on there. So, you can't hardly blame them, because that's the way they're making a living, but we're limited on what we can do with that.
Thank you.
Mr. Morris?
Is that Pearson that the state buys the books from?
There's lots of publishers, Holt Mifflin, there's several different publishers that are nationwide. Most of them are nationwide publishers, but I don't believe they're all Pearson books, no.
But are the state of Texas, most of the books they buy from Pearson?
I don't think so. No, they're buying those books are now coming from the publishers. And Pearson's not the main publisher on that.
All right, thank you.
Marty, I guess, and I appreciate the explanation, but I guess I'm having a hard time wrapping my mind around the books, one per one. And so, like you say, they're under adoption for 8, 10, 12 years.
Right.
So we retain those copies here. So we don't have to have a new book for each student that gets into that class.
Correct.
Or do they automatically send us a new book?
In previous years, the way it previously worked is whatever our enrollment was, the state kept a track by PEIMS numbers of how many students we had enrolled in each of our classes. And so those classes were tied to a textbook. Example might be Biology 1. So they would the state could pull up and say, you have 6,500 students enrolled in Biology 1, so you are entitled to 6,500 books. That's what we have, we show our records over the past, since the life of that adoption, you have received from the state 6,500 books. So you're not entitled to any more books from the state. If you grow, and we say we grow 100 kids, now the state in previous years would have said, okay, now we're going to give you another 100 books for free. So whatever our enrollment was the number that was tied to each particular class. So it was tied not only by the kid, but that kid's in, say a high school kid is in 6 classes. If each class has a textbook tied to it, then that student would qualify from the state for 6 books, as long as we didn't go over our number that we had already received from the state. So they combine all those kids together. You have X number of kids, you're entitled to X number of books. And the other part of that was, if we lose textbooks in the old system, we had 6,500 textbooks, and we had a 200 textbook loss in biology. So now we're required, because that book belongs to the state, so we're required to replace those books. So we would have to buy, out of our money, 200 books to replace that, to get back to the number that the state says that we have. Now textbooks aren't tied to students as far as one-to-one anymore. So they're giving us funds, they're basing the funds on what's 50% of the interest drawn from the permanent school fund. So that number is always going to fluctuate depending on how the market is and how much money that permanent school fund makes. So we really can't project the next biennium what we're going to get. The next adoption is a science adoption, which is going to be in 2014 to 2015, and we've already been told by TEA to expect to be short, the funds that we're going to receive is not going to cover one-for-one for those science classes that are going to be eligible for the adoption. And one of the big reasons is science books are extremely expensive. The other issue that we have with textbooks, because we are providing a one-to-one for AP classes, for dual credit classes, those classes that we named, AP books are very expensive compared to the regular textbook. A normal textbook, an average normal textbook probably costs around $70 to $75. AP books cost anywhere from $80 to $250. And we want kids to take AP classes. So our AP numbers are growing rapidly, and we have not previously had that book, so we have to go out and buy those new AP books. So that is an additional cost to us.
Okay. Any other? John?
You indicated that the books are not tied to the students.
As far as the state.
As far as the state.
For funding.
Is the new accountability testing, is STAR in any way tied to textbooks?
Not a particular textbook. We do have to certify, and that's one of the things that y'all did at one of your last board meetings. We do have to certify that we are meeting all the texts that enable a student to pass the STAR testing. And we do that not only through the textbook, but through lots of different curriculum tools that the curriculum department develops. We also have a lot of supplemental materials and we've always had a lot of supplemental materials that could be an additional textbook even, that we buy for some of the classes to use for additional resources. So it's not totally tied to that textbook, and I'll kind of defer to Linda if she wants to expand on that.
The textbooks are supposed to have the text represented, so the essential knowledge and skills represented in them. And so we check to make sure that we find them, but the depth that they're found in there vary. And again, typically, we've already had to write our curriculum because they're outdated.
And when a textbook is adopted by the state, and it's on what's called the commissioner's list, then that's supposed to be a textbook that they have checked with the state that book meets all the criteria for the essential knowledge for the text. That one textbook should meet it. But we do always supply additional materials for those classes.
Okay. Any other questions? Certainly appreciate y'all's report. Thank you very much.
Sure.
The board will now review and discuss the following action items. Action item 5A, the board will consider awarding bids, contracts, and/or authorizing purchase orders for the following items. 1, athletic equipment, baseball, golf, soccer, softball, and track. 2, document cameras, visual presenter, and video-audio matrix, renewal year 2 of 2. Follett library software renewal. Number 4, grocery goods and supplies. Number 5, HVAC parts and supplies, renewal year 2 of 3. Number 6, installation of bollards and swing gates, renewal year 2 of 3. 7, installation services, renewal year 2 of 3. 8, playground and outdoor equipment, renewal year 3 of 3. 9, plumbing parts and supplies, renewal year 2 of 3. 10, portable building tie-downs, removal and installation, renewal year 2 of 3. Do we have any questions on this from any board members? Okay, can we move this to consent? I'm sorry, it is on consent. B, the board will consider extending the time period allowed for Brook Hollow Baptist to rent facilities at Tips Elementary School per GKD local by 6 months. Any questions on this? Okay. C, the board will consider approving on second reading additions, deletions, and revisions to district policies. 1, DIA local employee welfare, freedom from discrimination, harassment, and retaliation, a revise. 2, FB local equal educational opportunity, a revise. 3, FFH local student welfare, freedom from discrimination, harassment, and retaliation, revise. Anybody have any questions on those? Moving along. D, the board will consider approving the tax refunds of $500 or greater for Cypress-Fairbanks ISD. Do we have any questions on that? Mr. Jackson?
Bob, merely a comment I had. The tax refunds this time are terribly pedestrian, and I had a couple of questions about odd-sounding names that I covered with Stuart offline.
Okay, thank you, Tom. E, the board will consider approving the minutes of the August 9th, 2012 special call meeting. Anybody have any questions or changes they want to make? Nope. All right, moving along. The board will consider approving the minutes of the August 13th, 2012 regular meeting. Any questions? Moving along. And we move into the action items, the non-consent. 6A, the board will consider approving on first reading additions, deletions, or revision to district policies. Presenters are Dr. Linda Macias and Mary Jadlowski. Oh, I'm sorry. You just have questions tonight, excuse me. Do we have any questions on this? Anybody? The policy number is EFA Local Instructional Resources, Instructional Materials. Do I have a motion to move this to consent? Is that in agreement with everybody to move to consent? I don't need a motion, do I, Marty? Okay, just woke up this morning, okay. We are going to move B, and we'll discuss that by itself. The board will consider approving the 83rd Legislative Session priorities developed by the Community Leadership Committee. Presenter is Teresa Hall. Are you going to present that tonight?
No, we would like to share this with the board on Monday evening,
Monday.
when we have members of the CLC who will be here to share those priorities with you.
We're going to move that to keep it at non-consent.
Non-consent, thank you.
Okay, so we won't have that presentation. C, the board will consider adopting an order authorizing the issuance of one or more series of unlimited tax and refunding bonds, setting certain parameters for the bonds, authorizing the superintendent and associate superintendent for business and financial services to approve the amount, the interest rate, price, including terms thereof, and certain other procedures and provisions related hereunto. We have a presentation from Stuart Snow, Ryan O'Hara, and Jonathan Frales. Hello, Ryan.
Thank you, President Covey, members of the board, Dr. Henry. We are asking you to adopt an order authorizing the issuance of bonds for new money as well as for refunding of certain maturities of previously issued bonds. With regard to the new money bonds, we are proposing the sale of $60 million from the 2007 bond authorization. The intended use of the proceeds for this sale for the new money is to fund about $32 million of the 2002 project renovations, future school site purchases, the balance of funds needed for the construction of elementary school number 54. We've got some ADA work. That's not average daily attendance, that's Americans with Disability. And then some school buses, 24 in total, that we are going to use in conjunction with some grant money that we're applying for. So with regard to the proposed refunding portion of the issue, we have an opportunity to refund various series of previously issued bonds from the Series 2002A and Series 2003 bonds, and at this point in time, achieving a projected net savings in debt service of over $5 million. We are recommending that you approve the bond order that authorizes the issuance of the new money and the refunding bonds and award the sale in accordance with the specified parameters that will allow administration to complete the sale negotiations that are in the best interest of the district. In addition, tonight with us is Jonathan Frales, our bond counsel with Racel and Giuliani, and he is here to answer any legal questions that you may have. And also here tonight are our financial advisors, Frank Ildebrando and Ryan O'Hara. And having said that, I would like to turn it over to Ryan. And he's with, they're both with our financial advising firm, BOSC, and he will make a presentation that he's prepared.
Thank you, Mr. Snow. Dr. Henry, members of the board, again, Ryan O'Hara with BOSC, and joined by Frank Ildebrando out in the audience. I did pass out a presentation I'd like to briefly walk you through. As always, we like to start with what the bond market is actually doing. On page 1, the bond buyer index, that blue line, as we always refer to that as basically the Dow Jones for tax-exempt municipal debt. Currently, that's at a 3.72%. You can kind of look back to 1990 and see how interest rates are historically at low levels. We've had a lot of volatility this year, but overall, you can't complain about where the ranges have been. We don't expect a lot of changes going through the course of the year. Might have some interesting times leading up to the election, but we'll probably see a little more volatility, but again, staying in this relatively low end of the range here. Page 2 is an overview of the refinancing that we're looking at. As Mr. Snow said, we're looking at refinancing certain maturities from the 2002A as well as the Series 2003 bonds. These bonds outstanding range at an average interest rate of 5%, and in today's market, we can get that down to about a 3.54%. And as Mr. Snow said, that saves us about $5.1 million. This is basically an optimization analysis that we do, so you can look at a maturity-by-maturity basis where the actual savings is coming from. A good question to ask is, why haven't we done this up till now? Federal tax law precludes us. These were both refunding issues. We have to be within 90 days of the call dates, and the call dates are February 15th of 2013. So what we're looking to do is get the parameter order passed tonight. We'll come back and actually look at selling the bonds in mid-October. All that goes to the Attorney General for his approval. It takes about 30 days there, and we would actually close in around mid-November. And I'll go to the calendar in a second, but I wanted to give you that insight. Page 3 shows how the savings would actually be laid out. This page shows on the left-hand side the actual outstanding indebtedness for the district. You take away the bonds we're refinancing, add in the new bonds, it's roughly just under $24 million in refunding bonds. And the far right column shows the actual savings, looking at roughly $343,000 on average a year from years 2014 out to 2028. Again, $5.1 million in savings. Page 4 is how we envision the new money being amortized. Again, the left-hand side of the page is the debt that we envision that will happen after we have the refinancing. The middle columns there show the principal and interest. We are projecting that we'll only need to sell about $53 million in new money bonds to generate $60 million. Buyers out in the market are paying a premium for most deals that we're seeing. We've actually been in that kind of a market for about 10 years now. Far right-hand side shows how we envision the resulting debt service laying out. Page 5 is simply the calendar that I alluded to earlier. With your approval on the parameter order Monday night, we'll begin drafting all the documents in conjunction with your bonds counsel, Jonathan Frails, here tonight. And we'll look to have ratings calls the week of September the 24th. Finalized the official statement, which is basically the document that tells the history of the district, financially speaking, as well as the details of this sale. We'll look to sell have the bond pricing middle of October. I've got projected here week of October the 15th, and then we would close week of November the 19th. I think that's Thanksgiving week. We're going to try and do as much as we can, but again, we have to be within 90 days of that call date, so that's going to drive a lot of the timeline here. But with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have. And I've got my lawyer with me out in the audience, so if we get any legal questions, he can help us out as well.
Mr. Jackson.
I have some rather perfunctory questions. I presume that by issuance of this debt, we will not run afoul from a debt compliance perspective for any of our debt covenants?
No, sir, not at all.
Secondly, with the refinancing of these bonds and the lowering of the interest rate, will that put us at an arbitrage penalty?
No, right now what's happening is with interest rates being so low, we're not earning anywhere near what the yield is on the bond. You're going to see an interest rate on that escrow out there at 0.0 something, and so it's not going to be a problem at all. It's a good problem to have if we were in that environment. It's always nice to earn more than you can, but we're not going to see that here.
Right, but we are a tax exempt, and the other part of the question is y'all do the arbitrage calculation on our behalf?
We do not, actually. We provide all the information to the arbitrage specialist. It's always been something that's always been outsourced. We don't perform.
We have an outside firm that computes our arbitrage rebate and arbitrage on all of our previously issued bonds.
Another question that I suspect I already know the answer to. We have heard twice in the past 8 months that we need bond money for technology. Can any of this bond money be used for technology acquisitions?
Well, the purpose of this new money issue, are you talking about the new money?
Yes.
The specified purpose for this new money is not for technology. We have issued technology. In fact, I think the most
Previous issue
recent issue was, a good part of that was for technology.
And then I have, well, I'll save that question. That covers it. Thank you.
It's your time. Anybody else? Thank you.
Thank you.
Does everybody want to leave this on a non-consent and treat it alone? Okay, then well, that's what we'll do. D, the board will consider approving the granting of 0.0147 acres, 640 square feet tract for a water meter easement and a 0.2093 acre, 9,115 square feet access easement to Emerald Forest Municipal Utility District located off Falcon Road for water services. You want to have any questions for Mr. Sprague? Okay. I'll go on, is that okay to go on consent? Okay. Agenda item 6E has been removed from the agenda. F, the board will consider approving changing the date of the special call board meeting to recognize the National Merit Scholars from Monday, January 28, 2013 to Monday, February the 4th, 2013. Does anyone have any questions about that? Do y'all understand the reason, right? Okay. It's okay if we move that to consent. Everybody's okay with that? Okay. The board will consider approving changing the time of the special call board meeting to canvass the board election ballots on November 19, 2012, from 9 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. Anyone have any questions about that? Can we move that to consent? Okay, we're in agreement. The board will consider the endorsement of candidacy of Ron Cryer, Spring ISD, on TASB Board of Directors for position 4A. I'm going to be the lead presenter here because I'm the one that messed up on this at our last meeting, and I thought we could only choose one of the two people that we had been given resumes for, and so we chose one, and I based that because Ms. Woodall had worked with Marty before, and I didn't know much about Mr. Cryer. And then come to find out, we could have chosen both because both positions were available. So it is after the fact, and it will not affect anything because Mr. Cryer is running unopposed, so he's going to be on the board anyway. But to just show our support, I felt like we need to bring this back up again and consider it for a motion or to be part of our acceptance on Monday. So does anybody have any questions about why we're doing that? Yes, Tom.
I merely wanted to mention that I apologize profusely to Ron at the meeting the other night on your behalf, to let him know how terribly embarrassed we all were.
Well, when I see him, I'll tell him too.
And of course, I had to do the same. But thank you, Mr. President, for taking care of this.
Yeah, okay.
And I apologize for not being here because I could have straightened it out, but, that's the way things go, so.
It is, and
I
when
think we'll be okay.
when you're dealing with somebody my age, that kind of happens, so anyway. So we'll move that to consent. Is that okay with everybody? Okay, thank you. The board will review and consider adoption of the revised board operating guidelines outlining the duties of a public officer. I'd like to move this for Monday so we could have that in closed session and have it stand alone. Is that okay with everybody? Okay. The board will have a discussion on the following. The board will discuss the process and the charge for establishing attendance boundaries, which is one of our favorite things to do. Teresa Hall and Blanca Cooper. Y'all are on the hot seat.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Covey. We actually just wanted to take this opportunity this evening to share with you what we plan to recommend next month as far as the process for establishing our attendance boundaries. I'm going to ask Ms. Blanca Cooper, who is one of our coordinators in the planning department, who worked very closely with John Forquin, who I know many of you know well, who has worked with the district as an employee for many years, but now consults with us on establishing attendance boundaries. But Blanca is going to kind of share with you and discuss the process that we are going to recommend. And the need for the attendance boundary change is based on the opening of Elementary 53, which will be in the Bridgelands, and the need to obviously relieve enrollment at Warner Elementary. Although you received a lot of additional information on some concerns with attendance boundaries in many different areas in your board packet, it is not going to be the district's recommendation or the administration's recommendation to address those in this process. Obviously, we can certainly do that if you feel there's a need, but with this process, we're going to recommend that we really just establish the attendance boundary for Elementary 53 and address one section of Stonegate that, with the opening of Tuckerton going all the way through to Fry Road, that we zone a small portion of that subdivision from Burks to Rennell Elementary. And I think Blanca will be sharing with you that over the course of the last couple of years, we've been receiving numerous phone calls from parents that live in that area wanting to know, when are we going to be zoned there. I also want to share with you that we're in the process of researching and developing an RFP for an outside demographer to come in and do a more extensive evaluation of our attendance boundaries and our forecasting and planning for future school sites. And we hope to bring some information to you next month on that. But we would like to have this outside demographer then possibly work with us on establishing or any of the future changes in attendance boundaries that would address many of the other concerns that are highlighted in that board backup that you received. So I'm going to let Blanca kind of go into some explanation of that, and then we'll answer any questions.
Good evening. You have in your packet some information about the process for establishing attendance boundaries. I know we have 2 new board members, and you may not be aware of everything that falls under that category, but just to go over just a couple of items, we do, when developing recommendations for attendance boundaries, we look at geographical proximity of the students. We also try to minimize the driving time and the driving distance. One of our major concerns from our community is school feeder system, and we try to minimize how many different campuses an elementary will feed into and so forth. We also take into consideration the 5-year projections, enrollment projections, as well as thoroughfares, creeks, easements, and other structures for attendance areas. We also have community input, including email and written correspondence. The recommendations should not be based on a singular issue, but should be based on relevant information. We are currently in the process of starting to meet on some options for opening Elementary 53 in the Bridgeland community. And on January 19th, 2010, option 5B, the board approved the section of Stonegate west of Queenston would be rezoned from the Burks attendance zone to the Rennell attendance zone. Approximately, we're looking at 116 to 125 students at the present time. After studying residential development and student enrollments, recommendations will be made to the attendance boundary changes for schools unrelated to the opening of new schools. Recommendations for attendance boundaries and for student transfers related to boundary changes will be presented to the board no later than January in any given year. We're hopeful that we will be able to present a recommendation to the board at the December 10th meeting. Do you have any questions?
Anyone have any questions? Mr. Morris?
Yes.
Last time that we went through this process, I asked that in any future attendance boundary changes, that we have some overlays of the subdivisions
Yes, sir.
to make sure that if we were going to move some kids out of one, it's all and not just bits and pieces of them.
Okay, we will definitely provide overlays, that won't be an issue, but in reference to option 5B, that has already been voted on by the board, and that is a section of Stonegate. I just wanted to share that information with you now. So we will provide the overlays, but that is a parcel of that subdivision.
Any other questions? Blanca, just get me clear here a minute. 5B, which is moving part of Stonegate to Rennell, that's going to take place next fall, is that right?
Yes. The reason we didn't do it sooner was because Tuckerton didn't connect all the way
Right.
through from Queenston to Greenhouse where Rennell was. Now that it is, we can proceed. It's an option that was already voted on by the board, but, we'll make whatever recommendation we think that would work.
That's fine. Now I know how John Ogletree felt, because my grandson will not be speaking to me as soon as that happens, so.
Yes. Well, you can share with him that Berks has over 1,300 students, and it's,
I know, but that just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to him, does it, John? Okay, anybody have any other questions?
Yes.
Lyda?
Blanca, and just for the public, that was 2 years ago that we voted for that?
it was January 19th, 2010, yes.
Okay. All right, I just wanted to make sure that everyone realized it was several years back. And this is the parcel that you're getting calls from, with parents wanting to know when that change is going to be made, is that correct?
Yes. What we did, Rennell has had, low enrollment. They're at 974 today. So any students that wanted to transfer to Rennell, they did allow them from that section of Stonegate to go ahead. But the other students that are now coming in, every year we receive calls from the community going, are we ready? Are we ready? And we're ready for next year.
Excellent. Thank you.
And one other thing I wanted to share is that there will be a link on the website for anyone of the community to give us input, and there will be an anonymous link also, and we will take all that into consideration, and of course, we'll copy the board and the superintendent and the associate superintendents.
Any other questions? John?
I wanted to say, for our new board members, I appreciate you all's desire to make this a very smooth process, but I don't think they would really feel like they have really experienced being a true board member until they can go through a full boundary conflict. So leave a little of something for them to have to experience.
I can assure you, you will have stacks this high of input on boundary community recommendations.
Ms. Woodall?
Blanca, and can you make sure that the statement, or somehow you let people know when they come online to give us input, that it is not a vote like American Idol? This is strictly for input, and sending us the same message 3 times in a row at 2:30 in the morning is a dead giveaway. So if we could.
But since it is anonymous, I don't know who's sending those emails. But there is a sentence that we are going to put in this year. It says community input is not in any way a vote, but rather a way to gain insight into the opinions and concerns of the community, as well as to get new ideas for boundary plans.
Excellent.
So hopefully that'll take care of that.
Thank you. And thank you in advance, because I know that you get a whole lot more phone calls than we do on this. So thank you for your patience in dealing with
Thank you.
Mr. Jackson.
some parents.
A point of clarification. You mentioned that 5B was adopted roughly 2 years ago by the board.
Yes, sir.
Does that include in our board packet, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pages. Were all 5 pages adopted?
Yes, yes, sir. I went ahead and gave you the whole 5B option. At that time, we opened middle schools and we redistricted high school boundaries, so we, added everything. But page 1 is the section of Stonegate that we're referring to in 5B.
And Tom, I may have confused you on that when I made a reference to other areas. That's not the same document I thought that we had forwarded to you, because there are several other areas of the district that I think we have received requests for us to consider looking at possibly rezoning some students based on projected enrollments over the next couple of years. But again, it's going to be our recommendation that we kind of hold off on that, because the following year, for school year 14-15, we're going to have to establish boundaries for elementary 54 and middle school 18. So that boundary change obviously is going to be a little more extensive, and it would be our recommendation when we do that, that we look at some of the other areas of the district and address it all at that time.
Any other questions? Okay. The superintendent's briefing portion of the agenda will be presented Monday evening. And do we have anything further? Then I think this meeting is adjourned.
So we just have a closed session?
Not tonight, we're going to do it Monday. Because we need all of us here.
We're going to do it Monday.
Don's not here. You have anything you want to say? Please, go ahead.
I just would ask if the board members, if you have time, there are some posters for the students that presented at the Leadership Academy, and they're going to be recognized Monday night. And we have markers, and it would be nice if whoever attended or whoever would like to make comments on their posters, if we could do that. And I don't know, Marty, is that going to pose problems if we're in the same room together signing posters?
Where are the posters going to be?
They're back on our
they're
conference
inside.
table
Okay,
in the
on the
back.
console. Okay.
And so that is the only reason that I'm asking.
That's fine. No, once the meeting's adjourned, you can gather socially, you just can't discuss or deliberate school business.
I promise.
Okay. All right, we're adjourned. See y'all Monday.
We're adjourned. All right.
Bobcats are going to beat Tech, just thought I'd let you know. Stuart, turn off your microphone.